Good morning, Purple Door. It's good to be here. Things didn't work out at 11 o'clock this morning. We thought it would. Had everything set up. What we hadn't counted on is the fact that we would have no internet this morning that kept cutting in and out, and that's beyond our control. A lot of people on the internet right now trying to do schoolwork and everything else that's going on. So we're taping this. We'll get it up online shortly so that we can be a part of it. I do have one announcement. Faye had called and let us know this morning that the flower order, the Easter flower order that was supposed to be delivered this coming Friday for pickup, is not going to happen. They canceled our order, so the flowers will not be there. You don't need to worry about coming out to pick them up or calling somebody to pick them up for you. And if you could pass that word out to people, it would be greatly appreciated. This is, we're going on a month of being at home. The church had its first online service on March 15th. We have been doing an 11 o'clock daily since March 15th, except for today. We tried. It started. But we've been trying to connect as best as we can as a church. It's difficult times. We know that. But this has been a great opportunity for us to be able to connect with one another and reach out to one another and be there for one another. It's given us an opportunity to be able to hear our prayer concerns, to interact with individuals that are on there. Please let us know if you have a prayer concern or an individual. You can either do it through the open comments or privately through an email to any of our staff. We've been trying to keep the prayer chain, the prayer lines open throughout this so that everybody is keeping our prayer lists active and going. The other thing I'd like to say is when we originally shut things down back in March, we had projected we could keep the church financially going probably through Easter, but it was going to be dicey after that. Well, it's after Easter. What we had not counted on was your generosity. We have seen you reaching out through mailing in your gifts. Electronic gifts are increasing both through the app and through the webpage. You have been reaching out and supporting the church in ways that we had not quite counted on, and we're still going on. We've cut back, obviously, as much as we can with the building shuttered. That's saving us some things as well. But we are holding our own, and we would not be able to do that without a lot of you supporting us through your prayers and financially. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As we move into this, these next days, we know we're going to be shut down through the end of the month, likely longer. Do not really expect that they're going to lift the stay at home after May 1, but we're waiting to see what the plans are. There are things being canceled nationally, statewide, our annual conference. There are a lot of things that are being canceled right now as we look ahead to the next coming months. You know what? We're going to do what we have to do. We're going to get through this. We don't know what the future holds. We're going to take it day by day, but we're going to do what needs to be done to make it happen. And if that means we continue to worship at home, we'll do that. And we look forward even more so to the day that we can come together. Easter service was a lot of fun. We had a little bit of everything in our Easter service. As of in our first day online, on Easter Day, we had over 2,500 people tuning in to watch that service. Most of them through Facebook, many of them on YouTube, or even on we had over 225 people watching through our webpage on Sunday. We anticipate that with people going back to look at parts or all of it, we'll have over 3,000 to 4,000 hits on Easter Day alone. That's amazing. Still not the same as being in church, but it was a good substitute for now. We're going to continue to be the church. This is obviously not anything that I or any of us had ever prepared to do. I had watched Facebook Live, never participated in one before. And I've watched, it's been funny. I've watched my colleagues talk about what they've been doing and their professional podcasts and their studios that they've been setting up. And it's been fun to watch, but that's not us. I took a couple of photos just to show you the high tech that we're working on here. This was one of the studios that one of my colleagues here in Columbus. This is one of 2 home studios he has to be able to do his podcast and his live broadcast. That's amazing. Now, we haven't quite gone to that extent. This is where I am right now. I'm sitting at my desk. That's as good as it gets. It's as high-tech as my Surface lets me be. Now, on Sundays, this doesn't work because I can't preach sitting down. I have to stand. I have to move. And so on Sundays, I go out onto my back porch. And this is my high-tech setup. The lighting is amazing as long as the sun is shining. I've got a clock to let me know if I'm going too long. And that styrofoam box can be laid on its side or up and give me 2 heights so that I can be at eye level and not have to look down. I mean, it's amazing. Now, obviously we saw today, the missing link is whether we're going to have internet or not. But that's okay. It is what it is. And we are here. It is good to have you join us on this day and all days. You may not have ever heard of a lady by the name of Helen Roseveare. Helen was a doctor from England, and she became a missionary doctor and served in the Congo for 20 years. Helen died in 2016, but she served 20 years in the Congo and was a speaker. She wrote books advocating her role with God's presence and God's mission. She tells a story about being in the Congo. This is about 3-4 years after she'd gone there. And she was working with a mom in labor and delivery who was not yet due, but was struggling, and they ended up losing the mom. But they saved a very premature baby, and she left behind a 2-year-old sister that was still there. The nights were chilly. Days in the Congo on the equator were very hot, but the nights could get chilly and drafty. And so what they would do in this kind of a case is they would take a hot water bottle, fill it with as hot a water as they could, and they would wrap it as much as they could around the premature baby, and they would keep it warm throughout the night to try to give it another day. And each day would allow it to get a little stronger, and hopefully they could let it live. So they went and got the hot water bottle, and as they were filling it, it burst. It was the last hot water bottle they had. And so Helen told one of the helpers, here's what we need to do. Get the baby as close to the fire as you can, and then lay down cuddling it with between you and the door to block all of the drafts, and let's see if we can't get it through the night. Well, they did. They got it through the night. They weren't sure if it was going to continue, but they got it through that night. Well, next morning, as Helen often did, she met with the orphanage kids, and they sat down to pray, and she told them about this little baby and her sister, her 2-year-old sister. And so they went to prayer, and one of the little girls, a little 10-year-old by the name of Ruth, and Ruth in her prayer said, God, we need a hot water bottle. We don't need it tomorrow. It's going to be too late tomorrow. We need it today. Helen heard that prayer and went, oh, good Lord, how am I going to deal with this? She hadn't received a package from home the entire 3-4 years she'd been there. There's no place to buy a hot water bottle, so what are we going to do? And then Ruth chimed in and said, and God, and while you're at it, send a dolly for her little sister so that she knows you love her too. Helen was aghast. The Prayer went on. She said amen. She walked out, not sure how she was going to have to deal with it, but she had too many other things to deal with right then, and so she was off at work. And a few hours later, an aide came running up and said, "Doctor, there's a car that came into camp, and they left a package on your porch." This had never happened before. It was new stuff. And so she left, and when word got around the village, then all the children ran too, and here was a 22-pound parcel that had been delivered to her. It had been delivered from England from her former Sunday school class. They had sent her a care package. And so she opened it. And the children were all huddled around to see what was inside. And she pulled out some clothes and some useful items, both in the hospital and the medical stuff and for personal living. And the kids were oohing and ahhing. She pulled out some homemade bandages for the leprosy patients and all sorts of kinds of things. And then she reached down and she felt something and her heart stopped. And she lifted out a hot water bottle. And she just looked at it. Who in the world would send a hot water bottle to the Congo? But Ruth knew exactly what it was and jumped up and said, "I knew God could do it." And then she said, "And if God sent that, then there's got to be a dolly here too." And she started rooting around in the bottom of that box. Sure enough, she pulled out a little baby doll in a nice, frilly, fancy dress. And she said, "Can we go now so that I can give her sister this little baby doll so she can know that Jesus is with her?" Wow. That's a story. God will provide. But the story ended by Helen saying she looked at that label on that box. She was in awe. And that box had been shipped 5 months prior by a Sunday school class that said they had felt that God had led them to put together a care package, and they didn't know what she needed, so they threw in everything they could think of, including a hot water bottle and a baby doll, to answer the prayer of a little 10-year-old girl who didn't even pray that prayer for 5 months after that box had been shipped, to arrive exactly that day. God will provide. God provides for us. God can provide in ways that God is providing for us even before we make the request. Wow. Now, sometimes in God's provision, we may question. We may not understand why or how or what. But God is there to provide for us. And God also is seeking us to be the providers. There needs to be that Sunday school class or that small group or that person that's praying, somebody that's helping be the provider for God's love and care. We know that God's been providing for us in some wonderful ways. How has God been providing for you in this time? How has God been seeking to fulfill your needs? Maybe God isn't answering all of our prayers right now, but we can see God in the midst. And how are you being a provider yourself? How are you able to share in God's love and God's peace, God's grace, God's hope? To be able to reach out through prayers, through phone, through email, maybe through a package in the mail. You know, God is with us always. You know, our church has been shut down. The doors have been locked. It's been closed for over a month. It's not the same place. Same building, but it's not the same place. And I don't know if you've ever really noticed, but if you look up in the front of the church, back behind the pulpit, there hanging from the ceiling is a candle, God's eternal flame. Now, from the pews, it's hard to see, and from the back of the church, you can't really see it at all. But if you look up close to that, you'll see there's a flame going, and it looks like a real flame, because it is. This isn't a battery, it's not an electric, it's a real candle. It burns for about a week. But we haven't been in the building in a month. And yet every week, Tom Danklosen is going into the sanctuary. He's replacing that candle. And while we may not have been in that building, God's eternal flame has continued to burn. It's not gone out. And it's not so much that it's burning in the church makes a difference. It's burning in each one of our hearts and lives as we go. It's a testimony that God's presence is not based in the church. It's based in the people who carry that flame in their lives, that we can be the providers of God's presence. We are the church. How has God provided for you? How are you being a provider for those around us? We are the Church of Jesus Christ. We are the Purple Door Church. We may be sitting back right now waiting to launch, it seems like. God's Spirit is just as strong. And we will get through this. We will gather together as a congregation. We will worship, we will sing, we will praise God. We'll look back on these days, and who knows what the future is writing right now. But we're going to look back on these days, and the one thing that we're going to see as a constant is that God was always with us. You know, when you're leaving home or leaving work and you're giving those last-minute instructions to the kids or the people around you, you want to make sure that they get it. But the last thing you say is the most important. You know, you're telling them don't party, don't leave, don't do stupid things, stay at home, be nice to your brother and sister. Make sure you get things done. But the last thing you say is the one that you want them to remember more than anything else. That if they forget everything else you told them, this is what you don't want them to forget. And it normally goes like this. If you get in any trouble at all, if you need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. And if you can't get a hold of me, then here's who you can. That's what we want to leave them with more than anything else. In Matthew 28, at the very end of that, it's the last chapter in the Gospel of Matthew. The 28th chapter. The very last verse. These are the last words Jesus spoke to the disciples. Jesus knew he was about to ascend into the heavens, and he was trying to get across to the disciples the most important things they should know. And these were the last words of Jesus. He said, I want you to go out into all the countryside, and I want you to teach and baptize in my name. I want you to tell people about me. And then his very last words were, and know that I am with you always, even to the end of the ages. The most important thing that Jesus wanted to leave behind to the disciples and to us is that he was not leaving us alone. I will be with you always. I will provide for you. I will give you hope. I will give you a source for peace. And I will never, ever let you go. That was the promise Jesus gave to us. And he said, it's not just me. I'm going to send the Holy Spirit to be with you so that you'll never be alone in this world. God provides. God provided from before Jesus was ever born. Before the world was ever created, God had a plan to provide for you and me every day. Purple Door, may God provide for you today and always as we go through this time and beyond. In the name of Jesus, go in peace. I hope you have a great day. Amen.